Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for Building the Birth Team, starting with Partner. This is going to be an awesome hour of Q&A with some wonderful birth workers who have tons of experience with exactly what we're going to be talking about: birth teams, labor, how to make it enjoyable and supportive and successful for our mamas. So my name is Catherine, and I'm from Denver Natural Mom, and I want to thank Baby & Company for putting on this wellness webinar series. And we're going to introduce our fabulous panelists for the next hour. Rebecca, will you just introduce yourself? Tell us what you do, what your kind of background or training or point of view is coming into this.
Sure. My full name is Rebecca Peterson, and I'm a mom. I'm also a Birthing from Within mentor, so I teach childbirth classes called Birthing from Within and Birthing Again. I am also a postpartum doula, a prenatal yoga instructor, and a regular yoga instructor as well.
Okay, Jen, we're going to jump to you.
Okay, my name is Jen Matera. I am a nurse. I currently work at the Baby & Company Freestanding Birth Center. I also teach childbirth education classes, and I'm a lactation counselor. And I've been working in mom and baby health for about a dozen years now. I'm also certified as a doula, and I've worked in labor and delivery and mom-baby unit in the hospital. And I am part owner of a doula agency in Denver called Cocoon Birth. And I'm a mom.
Don't forget that.
I know.
Well, compared to you guys, that's my only qualification, so you know. I love the breadth of skill set here. I mean, you guys can speak to so many aspects of new motherhood and pregnancy and those moments where we actually, you know, become parents. So that's what we're going to be kind of diving into today. And I definitely want to acknowledge our third panelist was Erica Jones, and she's busy with a mama right at this very moment. So that's the nature of birth and babies. We can't plan exactly when they're going to join us or how long that might take. So we wish Erica and her mama the best while we do this webinar. I also want to mention to you, if you're joining us live, we do have a chat window, so please feel free to ask any questions as they arise. We have a few things we definitely want to cover in our time together, but if you think of anything else or if we kind of spark a question for you, please do submit them in the chat window so we can address that. And with that, I really want to just kick us off and ask you to, you know, what is a birth team? Why do we need one, and who should be on it? It's a big question. So, Rebecca, are you ready to jump in?
Sure. I think at base, a birth team should be those people in your space when you are birthing that support your choices, your hopes, your dreams, and who have a skill set that knows birth, that has been to and attended births, even their own. And I actually think the partner is the most important piece of a birth team. So, you know, the trust piece for me seems like the most important part. The people you trust and their experience can make all the difference when moms are heading into and being in labor.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Jen, what would you like to add to that?
That's a pretty good summary. I like that. I totally agree. Obviously, the birth team is those folks who you choose to surround you during your labor and birth and postpartum. And I totally agree with Rebecca. Those people need to be part of your inner circle of trust. It's so important that those folks who are on that birth team are people that you implicitly trust and that you feel really comfortable around, so that they can help the birth process and not hinder it, even if they have the best of intentions. So definitely agree with all of that completely. And I think, like Rebecca said, there's a lot of different folks who can be part of that team. We can have professional people on that team who have a lot of experience with labor and birth. We can have family on that team who we feel really comfortable with and know are going to be helpful to us. And our partner, whoever that might be, who's our main support person, is definitely a vital piece of the team.
So let's dive a little bit into the family piece, because one of the bullet points we used to promote this Q&A was about, who should not be on our teams. And so you guys mentioned trust. You mentioned being helpful. Have you ever had to advise a mom on kind of navigating a family member that maybe wasn't necessarily in the circle of trust or wasn't necessarily helpful? And can you share a story along those lines, or some advice about how to tell people, hey, maybe you can come afterwards? I mean, is that even, because I know the postpartum period is also really important to protect too. So I'd love your thoughts on some of that.
Well, in a joking but serious way, in most of my classes, I say you have to look at who's in the room and ask yourself if you're okay being naked around them. So I would say that might be in a joking way, but also kind of diving into, could you be naked and comfortable to be vulnerable, to be, in whatever emotion comes up as it does in labor, with those people in your room? Could you do that with your mother-in-law? Could you do that with your own mother? Could you do that with your father-in-law? I mean, I hear oftentimes, families invited into the room without much thought, and I don't think they're a bad idea if you can picture yourself naked with them. I know that sounds kind of maybe flagrant, but that would be where I would go with that. And the other side of the question, navigating how to talk to them about it, I like to look at intention. Like, what is their intention? Do they want to support you? Do they want to see the baby be born? Do they want to be supportive to your partner? Like, what is guiding them to want to be a part of your birth? And if you feel comfortable with that, great, invite them in, and also set the boundary of, if I don't like it, are you okay if I kick you out? And that includes partners. Like, if I'm not feeling comfortable and I need time to myself, are you going to be offended if I kick you out of the room so I can center and get back into my body and get to where I need to go? And if not, then giving them something else that they can support you with. Like, we do candle circles in my classes, like having someone call and tell the people in the circle, light candles, and that's how you can hold the space for the mom giving birth. Those are, short version of what I would say about that.
Jen, anything that you would add from working with tons of families?
I definitely agree. I think Rebecca's personality is so sweet and gentle and kind, and I love what you just said about being naked, and I feel like maybe I'm even a little more flagrant, because sometimes I take that to the next level and say, like, if you're comfortable being naked and moaning and grunting and pooping in front of those people, because it's really like this whole next level experience, right? And especially moms who are birthing for the first time, they don't always realize, oh, I'm going to do those things in front of these people that are in the room with me. Like Rebecca said, to kind of gauge your comfort level with folks. When you think about it in that context, would you be okay with them being there, and not just seeing that, but being comfortable supporting you through it, which is a whole other step up. And I would also agree with a lot of what Rebecca said about how to help folks be supportive, or kind of figure out, what their intentions are around being there. Because I feel like people who really want to be part of your support team, who really want to help you, are going to follow your lead, right? So if you talk to them honestly about what the things are that you need, they'll go with those needs, as opposed to really feeling like they have to be part of a specific thing, or do the thing that they want to do, as opposed to what your needs are. So I think having those real honest discussions is super important, right? If can I give you this specific job? If I need you to do this, can you do that? If I need you to step away, can you step away? Those are all really good questions. And it also, I think, helps the family members feel more supported too if we give them specific roles and find places where they can help out ahead of time, so that when we're all there as a team together, we're not trying to figure that out in the moment.
That's great. So since we're on this kind of family vein, I feel like partner fits in really nicely with that, and I do want to hear and talk a little bit more about how we engage our partners. You know, I think you guys both have interesting work as childbirth educators, so how do you engage partners or require partners to be involved in those classes? Are there things, I think sometimes it's a little bit, especially first time around, they have no idea what to expect, we have no idea what to expect. How can we kind of encourage them that this is, you know, their support's important, and, you know, their engagement, I guess. I don't know. I personally forced my husband to do about 40 hours of childbirth class with our first, so he jokes now that he really wants to teach our refresher gen, so just a heads up on that one. Okay.
I'm totally up for that. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So do you require partners, I guess, is the first piece. And, you know, how is even an instructor, are you pulling in, you know, a partner that maybe seems a little bit like on the sidelines or something, and, you know, what can we as moms kind of say to bring them into what's about to go down?
I can start on this one, because so at Baby & Company, we do require partners to be part of certain classes, right? The core classes, the childbirth preparation, for first-time parents and folks who have birth before as well. The breastfeeding class, the newborn care class, these are all places where we require partners to come. And our group visits, some of those as well, we ask partners to please attend. And that is definitely part of our effort to engage partners in the whole process, right? I mean, they need the education around it, because we all know that education is comfort, right? So the more that we feel informed and educated about something, the less fearful we are, the more comfortable we can be participating in that and kind of knowing what's going on. It's just as important for partners as it is for moms, right? Because they can also kind of get stuck in that fear cycle too, and not knowing what to do and kind of deer in the headlights sort of thing. So that's part of the engagement. I think the biggest part, though, in general, is just including, right? So in the midwifery model of care, in the birth center model of care, we include partners in everything that we do. I can't tell you how many partners over the years have said to me, you know, last time I had a baby, just like nobody looked at me, nobody talked to me, nobody told me what was going on, nobody asked me how I felt about it. So I think really the most simple thing is just bringing the partner in on all levels throughout the journey of pregnancy and birth, and making sure that we're also acknowledging their needs, their fears, we're communicating well. And that's from a clinician's perspective, and also from a mom's perspective too, right? Like, bringing them into the fold, making them feel like we really value their participation and we want them there for lots of good reasons, and talking about that throughout that whole journey, I think is super important. And that's how they get engaged, right? Like, they need to feel like they're an important part of it, because they are.
Yeah, so well said. Rebecca, what would you kind of add on to that, or do you have a different perspective to share on partners?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a different one. I think inclusion is important. I think from the very beginning, honoring that in the past I would say partners, but men in general, if we're thinking about the history of childbirth, women have been included in childbirth all along the way, but it wasn't until recent that that husbands came in. So even if you're in a same-sex or single mom experience, having a partner with you has been shown over time to be make mom feel more comfortable. It's familiar. he or she is mom's anchor into what she knows, and that can be really comforting during labor, but also just honoring that it isn't necessarily been in our culture to involve them, and that their role is most important because they know mom the best. So they're going to understand the subtleties of her changes. And they're the other person that can make choices should mom not be in a place to make those choices. They're going to know her and be able to do that. In my classes, I start with that acknowledgement that, you know, that their role is really important, that they need to also support themselves, and so they're brought into the fold from the very beginning. They do all of the pain coping practices. I ask them lots of questions. We have a father-only or a partner-only class in every series, so that I can answer questions in a place that is safe, where they can talk about their hopes and dreams too, in a place where they're not worried, or where they can connect with other partners that might be in the same place they are. And I think building almost like the tribe of partners is almost as important as building the tribe of mothers. And but also honoring that I don't believe that partners have to be coaches. I think that's a lot of pressure in childbirth because they're experiencing it too. And so if they want to be coaches and mom agrees with that and they want to be coached, by all means, that is awesome. But in my classes, I encourage them to play whatever role they want to, and then to bring others into the fold to fill the need. Like a doula is really helpful to fill the need of supporting the partner too, and providing a little more confidence and whispering in the partner's ear things that they could be saying or doing, so mom sees, you know, so they're in the limelight of being really supportive. That's really long-winded how I would include that.
No, I think that's great. And one word that you used, Rebecca, that I really want to revisit is coach. So if our, you know, and I will share that we did the Bradley method, which is partner coaching, and so my husband was super into that, and I was into it, but I can see that not every partner is going to want to do that. Or is capable or interested in doing that, or not every woman wants to be supported by her partner in that way. So let's talk about other people that can play the role of coach. Is that something that you guys see the care providers doing, or is that another person in the room? So, and I do definitely want to get to providers. It's something huge part of the team we haven't even addressed yet, but who's the coach?
I'm going to speak to that because I'm working with a couple right now who the dad actually expressed really fervently. He's like, how can I coach her through pushing when it's not something I've ever done? How can I coach her through something I've never experienced? And so for him, intuitively, he was like, I can be there to support her because I know her and I can squeeze hips and I can love on her. And also my experience is that, you know, why not allow midwives and doulas who have been through it time and again, who have lots of experience, to coach her through those pieces, because especially like certain aspects of labor may require some coaching. If mom doesn't have a template in her body for what that feels like and what to do, she may need some coaching. Not all moms, but she may. And I would think that it would feel better to be coached by someone who's done it before, or at least understands the process.
So like Rebecca, that couple that you're speaking about, are they going to have a doula in addition?
They're in Boulder. They're at the birth center. They do have a doula. The partner, I mean, they've taken a lot of classes and have a lot of really good support. But, you know, mom wants her partner to be able to experience birth too without having to think about the next best thing for them to be doing. Like, of course, he is playing a really key role, and we include our partners like that in Birthing from Within. But we also honor that it's a truly emotional experience for partners too, and that sometimes it can be overwhelming and they may need a break as well, and that they may need to eat and go pee and do all the other things, and that it's nice to have someone else there. Not all partners are built to be coaches.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Okay, Jen, your turn.
Of course, again, I agree. I think, what we're moving towards in general, right, in maternity care right now is choice. So the choice of where do you want to have your baby, in which model do you want to birth, how do you want to do this thing? And I think this is just another big piece of that, right? Like each family has to decide what's best for them, and luckily there are options out there for every family. And the most important piece is actually exploring that and figuring out what's going to work best for them. So like Rebecca said, not all husbands want to be the coach, for sure. And we're so lucky that we're in a place where we have a model of care, for example, in the birth center, where the midwife is the coach most of the time, right? Can serve that role if that family is really embracing that model of care and that works for them. We have professional folks out there, doulas, who can come in and fill that role and also support the whole family unit as well. There's just so many options, and I think the most important thing is that the family decides what is right for them. No pressure on any end of that, right? Like, what is going to work best for you? What's going to make you happy? What's going to make you feel the best at the end of this experience? And so what we really have to spend the time doing is coming to that conclusion first.
So Jen, you've worked in a lot of different settings around birth, and you mentioned a baby and company, like the midwife can be a coach, can be coaching mom. That's not every setting, right? And so I would love for you to speak to just, maybe depending on your setting, you look at your team and your needs differently, and hopefully that will kind of segue us into care provider, because I definitely think that's one of the biggest things. And even though it's obvious, sometimes we don't always give it the thought that maybe it merits. So Jen, can you kick us off with that?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think that's what kind of sparked me to sort of take a step back in this conversation, because what we're really driving towards now is an even bigger subject, right? Which is, in general, how do we make the decisions about where we give birth and who is going to be surrounding us when that happens. And so I think it's a huge consideration. Families need to think about their birth environment that they choose, what one is right for them, and then what support do they need to add to their team for the specific environment that they're in. I mean, for sure, you look at midwifery care as an example, right? Midwifery care in the hospital, as far as consistent support and coaching throughout labor, is going to be different than it is in the birth center. Moms might spend more time in the hospital, but they may see their midwife less. At a birth center, a mom might spend more time laboring at home, and then once she gets here, her midwife's there, by her side for the entire rest of the time till she gives birth. We need to know what these details are so that we can navigate, okay, where are the spaces I feel I need to fill in support, and who do I want to put in those spaces? Does that answer? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great. So one question that did come in that I think is really interesting is, do I need a doula even at a birth center? And I think that's interesting because obviously, I mean, I'm planning my second birth center birth, and kind of on the same vein, it's like, am I going to have a coach and my midwife the whole time, or do I want to make sure that there's more backup in the room and building out my team? So what are your thoughts on that, either one of you?
I labored at a birth center with my first birth, and my midwife had another birth that was happening at the same time. And I didn't have a doula per se. I had my sister in the room who acted as my doula, and I was grateful. Between her and my husband, it was like a pretty supportive environment. And then the nurse was in there with me too, and I feel like even at a birth center, I mean, Jen can speak to this better than I can about being a nurse in a birth center, but nurses are so helpful. In fact, hospital, birth center, you name it, they are probably more present and there a lot of the time, at least in hospital settings especially, than the care providers. And when I worked with midwives, they spoke to this. They said if mom has a lot of support, then and we feel like she's supported in the way she needs to, then we don't necessarily hang out unless we're needed, because she might have all the support she needs. And so I come from that place. I think that if it's, if you want a beautiful birth team, you have to decide whether or not do you want a party in your room and you want to have a lot of people, or if you want it to be smaller and more intimate. And I think it's, like Jen said, very personal and different, but I'll let Jen speak to that. She's actually working in a birth center.
I don't know. I kind of want to reframe the question a little bit, because what I want to say is, no, you don't need a doula, right? Like, as a blanket statement, I want to change that a little bit. You decide, right, on a personal level, if a doula is the right person to support you or not, regardless of your environment. There's lots of good reasons to have a doula when you're in the birth center, just like there are in the hospital. So I totally am on board with that. One is that birthing in a birth center, you often do spend more time laboring at home, and a doula is a great addition to the birth team, especially when you're not even in the center yet and you're doing your early laboring at home. We can't predict what that early labor is going to look like, how many times you may have to come in and out of the birth center before you stay and have a baby. So a doula is a really great addition to the birth team as far as consistency and care in that early stage of labor. I also think, birthing in a birth center, most of the time we stay here and we have a baby. Sometimes we have to transfer to the hospital, and every birth center makes the best effort possible to make that care really continuous and support moms who need to transfer. But the fact is, the midwife from the birth center can't stay at the hospital forever, right? Sometimes she has to come back and have another baby at the birth center. So that doula that you've hired, who knows you so well and is truly your one person who's there from beginning to end, always, no matter what happens, can be so valuable in the case of a transfer as well. And then I would say, just in general here, I love working with doulas at the birth center. It's great. They're just a really wonderful addition to the team. And like Rebecca said, it's not always just one person laboring at a time, and there's lots of things that go on. So I think a doula is really, really valuable in any birthing scenario, and it's really the job of the family to kind of figure out what that means to them and whether they feel like that's something they really desire.
So let me just follow this up with another doula question, another doula scenario. For the mom that is not, or knows she's going to have a C-section, or knows that she wants an epidural or something. I've heard it said that, does that preclude you from, well, I don't need a doula because of X, Y, Z. And so let's just debunk that, and I'm going to let you guys do it. Not me, but yeah, so a scenario where maybe it's not setting, but it's like, well, my birth plan is X, so why would I need a doula to help me through that? Go for it.
Well, I think Jen and I, after being able to talk to her about cesarean births, I think it would be helpful to have a doula for a cesarean birth, because there might be times where dad needs to go with baby and mom could really use support in the OR. That said, if we back up a little bit and say, hey, if mom and their partner are educated on how to have a mindful, family-centered cesarean, then mom might feel differently. Baby might be staying with her. Like Jen said, necessary, maybe not, but super helpful, sure. Mama and partner are going to need support in those two situations. And as far as epidurals go, yeah, I think doulas can be really helpful in helping mom, because epidurals limit movement. doulas can be really helpful in getting mom into different positions so that she can still have a vaginal birth even with a cesarean. She can still be in awareness. Yeah, I think even if those are things that mom is planning for, I think a doula could be really helpful.
So yeah, we're saying necessary no, helpful yes.
Yeah, right? Well, necessary depending on who you are, right? Like you have to decide. I guess what I was trying to point out is you have to decide, is that necessary for you, right? I definitely don't want to put out there like every mom needs a doula. Look, these babies would come out with or without the doulas there. What the doulas are there to do is enhance the experience of childbirth, right? To make it better. And so it's up to the family to decide, like, is this something that would make it better for us? And I think that applies to all situations. And like Rebecca said, yes, I believe it also applies to cesarean birth. I believe it applies to whatever type of, pain medication you're thinking of using during labor. It doesn't really change the usefulness and the helpfulness of the doula. The doula who is specifically trained to understand that these positions can help the baby turn and rotate when I have an epidural and I need to lay in bed. This skin to skin can benefit my baby so much after my cesarean, and my doula can be there to help me facilitate that, right? So doulas are experts, and having an expert by your side in any situation is super valuable.
Can I also say that if you are thinking about having a doula, that would be a question to ask them. How comfortable are you if I am choosing to have a cesarean for no matter what reason I'm having it? Or are you okay, and will you support me if I choose to do pain medication? Because there are definitely some doulas out there that may not be comfortable with that may have personal opinions about what that means. And so when you do an interview with a doula, I think it's really important to ask them, like, I may be choosing to have these, for whatever reason. Are you going to be able to support me in that? And that would be a question, because I've had moms postpartum, when listening to birth stories, tell me, my doula tried to talk me out of it, and it was really something I felt I needed. It was the most compassionate move, and my doula tried to talk me out of it. And then there's trauma after it because they were talked out of something they truly, in their own shoes, felt in that moment was the most compassionate thing they could do. Because when a woman's in her body, there's no one on the outside that can really tell her what that next move might be. We can support her in her choices, and that's a really important role for anybody in the birth room for mom. But maybe having that conversation prenatally when you're interviewing and making sure that the doula is a good fit for you, if that's where you're going with your birth.
Yeah, Rebecca, I think that's a great point, and something we could probably talk for its own webinar. But how do we vet and choose these people that we're having in the room? Whether it's a doula, whether it's an OB or a midwife. We've talked a lot about trust. How do we, or what would you recommend for people that are like interviewing, or that was a great example of a question that I don't think I necessarily would have thought of, but making sure that the doula's beliefs aren't going to influence the support that I need, as the client. So I was wondering if you guys have thoughts on other great doula interview questions, or from a high level, like, how are we choosing these people? Should we be doing it? Should we and partner be doing it? So yeah, let's talk about that.
I think there's a long list of great interview questions you could you could ask a doula. I think even that should be on some level customized to each family, right? Like, I really encourage folks who approach the doula agency about, who should I pick, or how do I choose, to really come up with some of their own most important questions, right? There's lots of great lists. You can Google a list of questions to ask your doula about their experience level and this and that, but you really need to come up with sort of the questions that come from your heart, I think. Like, think about what your deal breakers are and then ask questions about those. What are the things you're most worried about? Ask questions about those. And then I think you need to trust your gut, which is sort of an abstract way to think about it, but I often will say to people, like, the most important thing about your doula isn't that she's done 200 births. It's that when you're in the room with her, you feel safe and you trust her, and you guys can communicate openly, and it feels really good, right? And it's the same with care providers, isn't it? You know, like, you want a care provider on any level, from a doula all the way up to an obstetrician, that when you sit down with them in a room, you feel like they listen to you, they understand you, they know what your desires are, they support them, and they can communicate honestly with you. And when you walk out of there, you feel great. That's like the most important thing, I think, as far as matching, right, with a doula.
I would echo everything, Jen, that you just said. And being in this from having attended births, not being a doula, and watching how each doula supports a mom and how comfortable she is. Even the most newbie of doulas could be a perfect fit for you if on a gut level you trust them. And I think sometimes that also helps parents prepare for those gut choices that they're going to have to make, either in birth, prenatally, postnatal, once their babies are earthside. They need to learn how to trust their guts more than anything. That's part of becoming a parent, and it doesn't stop when you're choosing your doula. I also think that recommendation goes a long ways. If you are in your tribe and you're asking friends, like, who did you use for your birth? How did you set it up? I mean, it doesn't have to be just a doula. It could be care providers. Who did you use? Why did you use them? I think sometimes our system doesn't always lend parents on a provider level to be able to make those choices, really. Some insurances limit who you can use, and that's when a doula can be really helpful, because you have that one tried and true person that will be there no matter who else shows up in your birth space. As far as providers go, I've also, when working with midwives, we had people. I worked with the Boulder Nurse Midwives when they were still open, and we had people transfer in at 38 weeks. It's never too late to interview and do a meet and greet, and then feel into it and ask the questions. Sometimes it's really obvious, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. I mean, a meet and greet usually is 10 minutes, 10 to 20 at most. But at any given point, if you don't like your care provider, even in labor, why not ask, can I change? Is there someone else I can work with? I'm really not liking this care provider. At least it would, make known in the moment that you're not happy and that something needs to shift. And it could be just that awareness to the care provider. And the truth is, you can kick people out. You can only kick people out. You can ask for different nurses. At least I think in most hospital settings. I don't know about the birth center settings. But hopefully you never want to do that. But I tell my parents, you're the king and the queen. You get to ask for what you want, and if you don't ask for it, you may regret it. So knowing that it's never too late to ask for more or to ask for less.
Jen, are you going to jump in?
I was just going to add one thing, as we're talking about, choosing providers now, and I think that heart level is so important, and the gut is so important. And I think the other thing that's really important is that you feel like your provider is a professional. And I think if we kind of focus our energy on that, like, are they professional? Sorry, too much talking today. And do I feel that they respect me on that level? That's also a good way to vet a doula as well. They're not winging it. They do have experience. They treat me professionally. their support documents, everything's really professional. That's really helpful too.
I think that's a great addition. Yeah, I love this idea about gut checks and what our instincts really telling us, because I think that we need to give ourselves some more credit that we kind of know. I did transfer care during my first pregnancy, and not super late, but I've definitely been meeting a lot of moms recently that, by the time that they have a belly and they're 20, 30 weeks and this is starting to feel really real, all of a sudden they're able to tap into like some confidence, because really making a big change like that requires some confidence, and you're going to say, okay, well, this isn't working for me, so I'm going to go find something that will. Are there any other like encouraging things or advice that you guys would give to parents really at any stage, but just to kind of tap into that, even especially, I think, of course, I built my website because I Googled everything as a first-time mom, and how scary and unhelpful that can be at times. So I just wondered if you guys had any words of wisdom for, especially new moms, first-time pregnancies, trying to figure out, what do I think about this, and how do I trust it?
That's a huge question. I would validate that I think if we think about 100 years ago, we didn't have access to all the information, all the classes, all the choices that we do. And so choice is challenging. It's challenging to the brain to have more information. And while it's a blessing in our culture, we have so much choice. And I really do think it's a blessing, because we really should have choice in what makes us feel safe, because that's like the cornerstone of birthing, is feeling safe, right? I mean, without that, our cervix doesn't open. So, at least naturally. I think just validating that choice is hard, and but it's also part of the tasks of preparation. If you truly want to birth in awareness and you want this to be a meaningful rite of passage, that it is, and it isn't, I don't know if that is the majority of our population that really believes that birth is that. There's a lot of fear around birth that isn't from nowhere, right? I mean, it comes from our families, it comes from movies, it comes from our culture. And so I would say it's part of your job as parents to really, and moms especially, to make sure that where you're birthing, who you're birthing with, what classes you're taking, all of that is what you want. That, like, on a gut level, you're not doing it to make someone else happy, you're doing it because it makes you happy, because it makes you feel safe, because it's in that cocoon of safe, warm, private, that a mom can truly unfold in birth and be able to walk away from it with the most positive experience.
I think that was really, really well said, Rebecca. Yeah. Jen, are you going to take a stab at this question too?
Sure. Again, it is huge. It's such a huge question. I totally agree with Rebecca that this is, in our modern day of birthing, it is part of the family's job as emerging parents to make these decisions. But I also think it's really important to take note of the fact that it's okay to change your mind. That's one of our biggest challenges, I think, is folks get engaged with a certain care provider and they feel like, well, I have to follow this through, I have to stay with them. I've been with them for 24 weeks and, what would happen if I changed providers now? And it's really stressful, but it's okay. It's okay to do that. And it's interesting that you both kind of pointed to that sort of number as like a 20, 24 weeks, like this happens, right? Because this, I think, for a lot of families is the time when it becomes real. We go see our baby on an ultrasound. Everybody at this point is feeling their baby move, and it becomes really real, and they start to think, wow, am I making the right choices? Am I making the choices that are best for me? Maybe I'm just going to this doctor because my girlfriend said she liked him and I don't really like him, and maybe I need to re-examine, and that is okay. It is. You can change your mind, like Rebecca said, right up to the last minute, and there's lots of really good options out there. So don't be afraid. From the care provider perspective, if you have a great care provider, they would rather you made a choice to leave and go somewhere else if they're not the right provider for you. So you're not going to hurt their feelings if they're good at their job.
Right, and it would show up in labor, which is the last place we want that confrontation to show up. And you may like your care provider as a gynecologist. I had this happen to me in my first birth. I had no idea about childbirth. I knew for sure I was going to get an epidural, and then I started getting more educated. And the further along I got, the more educated I got. And when I asked my OB what her vacuum extraction rate and what her episiotomy rate was, she wrote a prescription for Zoloft for me because she said I was too worried. And I knew in that moment I needed to change because that was not a good fit, because, I think those are perfectly honorable questions to have. And if your care provider thinks that you're anxious because at 12 to 16 weeks, which was early, but it was definitely there for me, I knew intuitively I needed to make a move. And I personally was drawn to the midwifery care model because I talk a lot and I am very sensitive and I know myself, and I knew that I would need the time. But some care providers, some moms and dads are like, whatever. If I go in and I get my questions answered and a baby's okay, my life's busy, and it really is personal, but gosh, it's so important.
So I have to tell a funny story because we transferred to midwifery care. And our first visit with a midwife, my husband was with me, and we kind of looked at each other and I'm like, is there an agenda? Like, we just felt like there was so much space and time to talk, and it was so foreign to us coming from like a more medical model, and this OB that was like, okay, check, 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 see you later, see you in 2 weeks or see you in 4 weeks. The first time we sat down with this midwife, I'm like, she's kind of staring at us. Is she waiting for us to say something? We totally had to reframe our thinking. And of course, by the end, I loved it because it was like you said, time to process, time to ask questions. But it's radical. It can feel totally different. And, we kind of had to check in with each other like, okay, yeah, I think this speed and this pace is going to bring us something different in this process. So anyway, that's just our funny story. And I like telling it to midwives especially because they're like, ha, 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 yeah. We'll have plenty of time to talk to you and ask about how you're feeling and how you're doing. And they actually really want to know the answers. It's not just small talk. It's not just how they greet their patients or clients when they walk in the room. There's an intention there to know how you truly are. So that's great. Well, I want to give you guys an opportunity if there's anything that you feel like we haven't touched on that you want to add about this process of building a birth team. And there are plenty of people that we bring onto our teams in the preparation, childbirth education, the way we take care of our bodies prenatally, and then we have an opportunity actually on Thursday on our webinar to talk about a little bit of postpartum care, specifically around sleep, sleeping as new moms and sleeping for our new babies. So, the team kind of expands when we look at the whole 10 months to 12 months of transition of pregnancy and birth. So if there's anything else you guys want to chime in on, I definitely want to give you that opportunity. Takers?
I'll just say, I think one thing we didn't touch on is there's so much out there for us right now. It's amazing and challenging at the same time. You talked a little bit about Google and how crazy that can be, and it just makes you nuts. And at the same time, there's so many people out there right now trying to make this better for moms. So get out there and find those people, right? There's groups, there's There's there are webinars like this, so many good resources. Access them and use them. Like, don't be afraid to jump into that community, because there's circles of moms like all over the place who have the same questions and concerns, have been through this before, and I mean, really, ultimately, other moms who've had these experiences are your best resource of all, right? So get out there and grab it. Get on, do stuff like this. Go to the, meet the doulas nights. Do all those things and figure out in a real organic way what is the best thing for you.
Jenna, of course, I love that answer. So, and you're so right. Yeah, the community piece is huge, and I think the sooner you get into it, the more comfortable you'll feel at 2 in the morning when you're nursing and there's a few other people up that you can text in the middle of the night too. So, how about you, Rebecca? Closing thoughts or words of wisdom for us?
I would. I've taught prenatal yoga for years now, and I teach it because of the community aspect. I really feel like, for me personally, and now that I'm teaching it, I see moms shift because they see options, because they hear different ways of, like, we have a community piece in every prenatal yoga class. So even if you're not a yogi and you don't think you do yoga, it is a perfect way to get your body ready for birth. It helps you heal postpartum. And on top of that, like, the community piece is there. And you're able to meet other moms and build your tribe with moms who are actually pregnant at the same time with you. Because a lot of the time, I hear it time and again in Denver, we have so many implants here, they don't have family in town. And really, your tribe, prenatally and postnatally, is so important. I believe they've done, I read it recently, a study that said that when moms get together with other moms, that they actually stave off depression. And since we know that prenatal depression is on the rise, or at least the awareness of it is, I would say on an emotional, physical level, like, definitely find your tribe. If it's not yoga, then it's an online group. It's Denver Natural Mom. It is birth center groups. It is your childbirth classes. And, involve your partner on those choices. Maybe not the prenatal yoga, but, involve them in all the choices that you're making. Have them come to your appointments as much as they can. Notice in the appointments if the care provider is also talking to them. That's really important to know, if they will also do that in labor, and involve them in how important they feel the care, the partner is. Because it is important. And yeah, a lot of places have Meet the Doula. I mean, gosh, you have such, between Erica and Jen's groups, you have so many choices in doulas too. Denver's got a lot of people who really want to support families. And I imagine it's the same all around the country.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Well, to close, I do want to give you both an opportunity to tell us where people can learn more. I know that you're wearing multiple hats. You teach in different locations. So give us some, web addresses or Facebook pages that we can check out to learn a little bit more about you. You guys both mentioned I'm from Denver Natural Mom and would love to talk to any moms, and we try to put out great content and connect you with good resources around Denver. I am partial. I think we're very lucky to be in this community. I think I wish it was like this for people in other places. I know a little bit that it's not always that way. So anyway, please tell us, Jen, where people can find you, and Rebecca, I'd love for you to do the same.
Well, yes, multiple hats. Let's start right now. I'm sitting in the birthing suite at Baby & Company. So you can find Baby & Company on Facebook. You just have to make sure you get the right center, because we have 5 centers across the country. So it's Baby Plus Co. Wheat Ridge is how you find us on Facebook. And the website is just babyandcompany, all spelled out.com. That's real easy. And then as far as doulas go, you can find Cocoon Birth on Facebook too. We're easy peasy, Cocoon Birth. Just make sure you spell cocoon right. COCOON, folks. And our website is cocoonbirth.com. And we make it really, really easy for people to find a doula on there. So if you go onto the website, we have a form you can fill out to find out if we have somebody who might be a good match for you.
Jen, are you also working with Maternal Instincts for postpartum doulas?
Yes, and we will link anyone who is looking for postpartum care or sleep support with the gals from Maternal Instincts directly. We're using them exclusively for postpartum doula and sleep support. They're amazing. Yep.
Yeah, I'm one of their postpartum doulas.
Yeah.
So I remember that connection. And I'm teaching childbirth classes. I teach birthing from within, both in Denver and in Lafayette. You can find out about my classes at sacredbreaths.com. We're talking about birth. It's in my brain. And I'm actually teaching a 4-hour intensive at Baby & Co. And you can find out about that both through Baby & Co. And on my website. I am also teaching at 2 different locations. One is called the Mamahood Denver, and they're the mamahooddenver.com, and a mom space in Lafayette, and it's just a momspace.com. You can sign up for both places. I also do birth refresher classes and postpartum doula work. So. Oh, and I teach on Saturday mornings in Denver at the Mamahood, teaching prenatal yoga, and on Wednesday nights as well. So I'd love to have moms in my classes.
Yeah. So fantastic. You guys are both wonderfully connected in this community and are just giving and providing so much for moms. So I thank both of you for your time today and sitting on this panel and sharing some of that expertise with us, although I know this topic is something that you both could probably go on for a long time. So thank you for sharing with us. And I, again, want to mention Baby & Company that sponsored this wellness webinar series. And again, invite you all to join us on Thursday at noon, where we're going to dive into new parent sleep strategies. And that's a big one. Sleep's a hot topic. So once you have your baby, then you'll be like, okay, when do I get to rest? So thanks again, ladies. It was wonderful chatting with you. We will be sending out this recording for anyone who's missed it or has jumped in for just a few minutes so that you can catch all of this great stuff. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.